morning. Welcome to West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. My name is Reverend Clyde Goings, and I am the assistant minister here. And I have to just tell you something funny. When I walked in, and the microphone was up like way up here, and I was like, Fish must be here. So Fish is doing the invocation this morning, so welcome, Fish. We're really happy that you're here. So I just want to welcome you guys on this beautiful Sunday morning where we come together every Sunday to remember our truth, that we're whole, perfect, and complete just the way we are. And I'm just loving how life is just unfolding and everything just seems to be moving along and things are opening up and gas prices continue to go up, but we're okay with that, right? We just know that they're going to come back down eventually. What goes up must come down. So we know that they're coming down already. So I want to remind everybody on Sunday, after service, that we have fellowship. So please start joining us for fellowship so we can get to know each other some more and just continue to grow our community. Also, our foundations class starts on Thursday, and it's at 2 o'clock. Yes, and Reverend Karen's going to be teaching it. So if you have not taken the class, or if you have taken the class, I encourage you to take it again. I've taken it 3 times and loved the class. Also want to remind you that the men's group, our men's retreat, is April 1st and 2nd, and Rod is thinking about it.
It's been suggested.
Yes, it's been suggested. So we've got a lot of great things going on and a lot more coming up. So I just want you to welcome everybody. So let's start with our vision statement. Kendra? There we go. I knew she had it up there. All right, so let's say the vision statement together. We are a loving, joy-filled community honoring the many paths to God as we learn and live the science of mind principles. And so it is. So just sit back, relax, enjoy this beautiful morning and Bradford's beautiful music.
So just take a deep breath and relax. We're going to get into that peaceful place.
Sorry about that.
42. Take another deep breath. We're getting to that quiet place. We're connecting with peace.
There I am. I will make a quiet place within my heart, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my mind. I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know. I will make a quiet
place within my life, and I will wait upon the Lord, quiet place.
So let's just settle into this quiet place and just recognize the sacredness of this moment. Take a deep breath and connect to that inner knowledge, that inner wisdom that just knows the truth of everything that's going to be said, sung, heard, and felt on this beautiful day. And let's take a moment from that place of gratitude to just express love and joy and blessings to all that had their hands and their hearts and their minds and their creativity that led to this beautiful day. The Bradfords with their incredible songs and music and that heart-to-heart connection, and the words that are going to flow through Reverend Karen into each one of our souls so that we have this beauty and revelry to take with us for the next week. And just settle into this and let the wind take us where we're going to go when this is done. And so it is. And I'm going to read from Awakening into a Complete Human Being by Atreya Thomas about forgiveness. Forgiveness means allowing the heart to remain open in spite of the intense impulse to close it. In other words, it means allowing all the self-preservation alarms to go off within the body and mind without letting them affect the inner vision that sees and loves the one in all things, times, and places. By this definition, it's not required that we make an intense effort to forgive someone in order to move on. Forgiveness speaks to a deeper movement of allowing a certain space for the pain while keeping our attention focused on our secret relationship with the divine presence. Yes, on the level of our humanity, it hurts. We may feel betrayed, often taken advantage of, or treated poorly. This experience is real, but as we shift our attention primarily to our love for the source of all things, we never push anyone out of our hearts completely. People and things are not what we need to trust. Rather, we need to trust the substance and common source within all things. This unifying principle is the energizing factor that makes all things possible. Therefore, above all, seek to fall in love with that, and you will begin to see the beloved in all things. And so it is.
Ready?
If you wake up and don't want to smile, if it takes just a little while, open your eyes and look at the day. You'll see things in a different way. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop, it'll soon be here. It'll be better than before. Yesterday's gone, yesterday's gone. Now on that next chorus, I want you to guys to sing it with me. I know you know it. Why not think about the times to come and not about the things that you've done? If your life was bad to you, just think what tomorrow will do. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop, it'll soon be here. It'll be better than before. Yesterday's gone, yesterday's gone. All I want is to see you smile. If it takes just a little while, I know you don't believe that it's true. Never meant any harm to you. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop, it'll soon be here. It'll be here better than before. Yesterday's gone, yesterday's gone. Ooh, don't you look back. Sing that. Ooh, don't you look back. One more time.
Bradfords. That was really awesome. That was fun. What a great reading for what I'm about to say. Good morning. Welcome to the West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Karen Rice, and I'm the spiritual leader of this community, and I'm so happy to be back to a routine and being able to hang out with you and see your beautiful faces, and boy, oh boy, do I got something to say today. Whew, I have a message today that has an urgency to it, and it feels important, but most of all, it's extremely relevant, and I love it when I write something, and then by the next day it turns into something much greater than I had on my radar. So the title of my message is, Enough Already. And you've got to stomp your foot when you say it. It's not effective if you don't stomp your foot. Title of my message is Enough Already, and I took it from a quote from Ernest Holmes, where he was talking about all the difficulties in the world, and he said this. This is such a great line. The world is beginning to realize that it has learned all it should through suffering and pain. The world is beginning to realize we have learned enough through suffering and pain. There has to be another way. Enough already. Let's draw a line in the sand and move into a clearer way of viewing, a spiritual way of viewing what's going on in the world, and how there's always tumultuous, chaotic times, and life seems to thrive on recreating itself in such a way that we can do the things we need to do and experience that continued growth of our own soul's journey. The founder of this teaching, Dr. Ernest Holmes, who said that those words that I just quoted, I found that quote in the book, The Essential Earnest. And The Essential Earnest is a compilation of just the writings and the spoken word of Dr. Ernest Holmes. So there are a lot of his lectures. He also had a radio show, a half-hour, once a week radio show in the 50s that was called This Thing Called Life. And so some of those, they actually called them sermons. Some of those have been transcribed. And so we have this plethora of information. We can see clearly how the man thought and how this teaching developed and came to be. Now, it's always helpful, I believe, because, I am such a, I'm a groupie, and Dr. Holmes is right up there at the top of the people that I just adore. But I like him so well, and I understand him and have taught classes just about him and how the teaching came to be, that I always fear people could leave thinking we're a bit of a cult, that we follow this man. Well, we don't follow the man. What we follow is the teaching, because he had a vision. He was a deeply spiritual person, and he did not intend to develop a new religion. But in order to preserve this teaching, toward the end of his life, he saw it was beneficial to take the formal steps, the formality that would preserve what he worked so hard to develop. What he believed he did was he took his passion and his deep spiritual yearning, and he looked for the truth in all world's religions and spiritual traditions, and he found these threads of truth. And he put it together in what he called a synthesis. And he used to say, it makes me laugh to think about it. He used to really say emphatically, I didn't write an original word. I just studied the great thinkers, and synthesized the great truths, and I put it together like this. But what he underestimated was the way he developed a methodology. His big message to us was that there are spiritual truths in the universe. If we study nature, if we replicate that process of evolving and the ongoingness of life that we witness in nature, that we will see the divine patterns that we can imitate in our own lives. That there are natural laws in the same way that there are spiritual laws, principles that are always in place. Then the better we understand them, the better we can align our own thinking, our thoughts, our choices, the direction, the way we sort of add a trajectory to our own lives. So Holmes had this passion. And, we can see if we look at, I've been thinking about all this because I'm teaching the foundation class again on Thursday, and I'm so happy. I've been getting a good response that a number of you are interested in hanging out with us on Thursdays at 2 o'clock for a while. But as I review that material to get ready to teach it again, I remember these great things. He was one of 9 kids. The family lived in this farmhouse in upstate Maine, and they were all sons. I just can't imagine what it would be like to have a house full of boys. I had one. That was enough. That was a lot for me. And his parents raised them, the parents raised these 9 sons in a very, it was actually a religious environment. So they had things they did religiously. They attended church. They read the Bible every day, and they prayed before their meals, and the boys were exposed to these great spiritual truths. But the unique thing that Anna and William, the parents of all the Holmes boys, the unique thing they did was they refused to bring the dogma of religion, of Christianity, into their home. And so they did not teach a fear-based religious, and any religious ideas. They taught them, and a lot of it was by example, to live a deeply spiritual life and to not bring in, this was key to Holmes. Holmes said this, they did not bring in any superstitious beliefs that you might otherwise see, which I think would have been a challenge when everybody went to church on Sunday, to the church in the center of town. Y'all got stuck with the same preacher. It wasn't like now where you have a lot of choice. So Holmes worked hard, laboriously, put a lot into writing that, what we call the textbook, the Science of Mind textbook, and he believed in it. So I get really excited, or it tickles me when I read statements that he made he published his first book in 1919, and he made his transition in 1960. So in all those years, he was, accumulating work that was his. And I love it. I get so tickled when he makes those statements like, I really believe in this stuff. We have something that everybody can use. When he kind of bragged about, when he had those moments of not being too humble, when he recognized that what he had done was substantial. So I love that chapter. There's a whole chapter in the Essential Earnest compiled by Dr. Jesse Jennings, who, by the way, is an ongoing contributor in the Science of Mind magazine. If you haven't read that magazine in a while, we always have a few out front. I could not live without it. I love it. They're short little articles and great daily inspiration, and it's just really good stuff. And Jesse Jennings does a Q&A that is I always want to see the kinds of questions people are asking him and how he answers them, because I believe he's a strong voice of a current application of principle, and Dr. Holmes, he knows a lot about. I really respect him. So there's a chapter in his book that is, the title of the chapter is "The World Has Suffered Enough." And in that entire chapter, there's nothing but quotes and paragraphs that are transcribed from talks Dr. Holmes gave, but all of them address theological problems that Holmes attempted to explain to us, to help us understand evil, to help us understand suffering, and what do we do with war? Think about it. Holmes published in 1919. He wrote through all of those really difficult times in our history, in the history of this country and the world, and all the other world events that we live through. And this whole chapter then, which is really worth, we have those books in the bookstore. The price of the book is worth that chapter to see what he would say. It gives you a clear idea of what he would say about everything happening in the world today. So I believe there's something that happens when we get stirred and we start to notice we're not living our life the way we want to. And we suddenly go, wait a minute, enough already. There has to be another way. What am I doing? I know better than this. Do you ever have that happen where you get in one of those cycles where the garbage disposal breaks and then the car starts leaking something and then, one thing leads to the other, and you have to stop those cycles. We have to change our thinking. We have to not be stepping into the doom and the gloom of it, because there's plenty of doom and gloom in the world that can really dig that hole deeper if we don't manage our own thinking, our own way of being in the world. So there's nothing more powerful than when I put my foot down, because I see some cycle in my life I'm ready to set aside and turn myself in a new direction and expect better results than all the stuff I'm leaving behind. But there's nothing better than when I do that and somebody else resonates with that foot stomping, with that way of saying, no more suffering. I don't have to learn this way anymore. And somebody aligns to that and goes, you're right, I totally agree with you. You know what's happened? We now have two people in agreement on something really important. We're pulling our energy together and agreeing that there is a higher level of looking at everything that is unfolding. So I was beginning to think, as I was putting all this together, that what we're really talking about here is drawing a line in the sand, figuratively drawing our line in the sand and say, I'll go this far, but I'm not going that far. I'm not going any further than that. And then that's when we move from feeling like we're a victim into that principle of the working law that works in our behalf, and we begin to make better choices that then, because of the law of cause and effect, start showing up in our life as more good, as a greater experience of beauty and joy and wonder and a deep spiritual connection to that which is greater than we are. So we're setting a boundary that puts a limit on how much pain we are willing to endure in our own life, but we are also setting a boundary as to how much pain we are willing to witness on this planet. And so some of the chaos that it appears we are moving through, and we are moving through a lot of chaos, no question, but some of it, of that seeming chaos in the world, is a way, I think it's a response to a lot of people getting together and slamming their foot down, and except it looks like we're disagreeing with each other, or that much passion can appear scary for a moment. So if we could just breathe, aren't you all glad I slowed down to breathe? When I write a talk I feel excited about, I talk fast, don't I? That's a good thing. So we draw a line in the sand, which I want to say to you is different. It is not the same thing as putting your head in the sand. See, Dr. Holmes could say that the world has suffered enough because he was sensitive to the pain of suffering, because he felt and had compassion for others who had experiences of suffering. It wasn't because he avoided it. It was because he was sensitive to it. He felt it. He was willing to feel it and make a choice that would be a positive choice in behalf of everybody, all of humanity. So spiritually speaking, this is important. This is important. A line in the sand would mean then that we put our foot down to our own negative thinking. See, that you can never be a victim if you're willing to manage your own negative thinking. So for me, and those of you who have been coming here for years and know me well, know that that is always a part of my spiritual practice. When something's going sideways, the moment I notice, because that's the problem, is we have a tolerance for pain. Some of us have a very high tolerance. In fact, in the Course in Miracles, it says, you may have a high tolerance for pain, but thankfully you do have a limit. And I like that, I mean, I like to realize that. So I can be a strong woman, and I can take on a lot. But at some point, I also have taught myself and continue to teach myself to be aware that I don't have to be suffering so much, that I can draw my line in the sand and put down my own negative thoughts. There has to be another way. When we look at the way that our anger can be an energizing force in our lives. Have you ever gotten mad and put your foot down and drawn a really clear line in the sand, but somebody else walks away with their tail between how do you say that? They're humble. It's not doing no harm when we do that. It's like you've hurt somebody's feelings or something because you've felt so passionately. And sometimes that's the only way some of us know how to communicate and how to say no, or how to, we're such good people pleasers that it's hard sometimes to even know what our own desires are. So anger can be used in a positive way to fuel us to make decisions. But when we are mean and use our anger as a weapon, then we have not done that well. So as we become aware of our own discontent, we can interrupt that cycle sooner, and we can do it with more kindness and still be firm in what we're doing. Many of you will remember a woman named, well, you won't remember this name, Mildred Norman. Anybody know who Mildred Norman is? She's the Peace Pilgrim. So many of you, I know we don't know her by name, I'm in the mirror rehearsing the talk this morning going, the Peace Pilgrim, the Peace Pilgrim. Well, what does she have? Has to have a name. So I looked it up, and her name is Mildred Norman. She lived from 1908 to 1981, and she's such a great story because she's the woman who, during the Korean conflict, she started walking for peace. She was a peace activist. Well, Dr. Holmes, as it turns out, did his radio show about that same time. And he, on August 6th of 1950, he delivered a sermon on the radio that was called Spiritual Armament. And he spoke because of the Korean conflict, the same thing that motivated the Peace Pilgrim to become a peace activist. Except Holmes gave this sermon at the beginning of the conflict, and she was around 1953. I'll get back to her in a minute. But listen to what Holmes said regarding the Korean conflict in 1950. We in the world are in a period of great crisis. Can you see how we can relate to this today? A crisis which many feel can mark the beginning of a new and united effort toward world peace. See, in 1950, it was one of the first times that countries were uniting and coming together for a cause, for this conflict, and they were getting tired of war. This is interesting. The over-pessimistic are afraid that this crisis might lead to complete world devastation, but those with hope and faith should not feel this way. See, the over-pessimistic people, think about what he's saying here. The over-pessimistic are afraid that the crisis is going to lead to complete world devastation. Does that sound familiar right now? We have a lot of fear around that. But, it's bad enough gas is so expensive, but then there's the whole world to think about. But we should feel that we should have hope and faith, and we shouldn't feel that way. Rather, we should feel that this crisis can lead to something good, something which will make the world a better place. 1950. So now, a couple years later, the Korean conflict is unfolding. It's 1953, and the Peace Pilgrim starts walking And she never quit walking. She walked across the country in her lifetime. She walked from 1953 was the day she did her kickoff on New Year's Day. And by 1964, she never quit walking. She reported that she had walked 25,000 miles. Somebody must have told her because she probably didn't care. She was just an average woman who had a cause and knew what she was doing. And so she quit counting after 1964. She lived until 1981, and she actually, over 3 decades, 28 years, almost 3 decades, she crossed the United States 7 times by foot. She carried no possessions. She carried no money. She did not beg for food. She depended entirely on the kindness of strangers. Isn't that cool? And you want to know something really ironic that's not so cool? She would be asked from time to time to lecture at universities or places where they would be, inviting a peace activist to speak. And she was actually killed in a car accident being transported to one of her lectures. Otherwise, she'd probably still be walking. I tell you this because, I brought this because I was going to tell you that, because this is a picture of me. You'll have to come up and see it later. This is a picture of me. I'm a baby. I'm 2 years old, and this picture is taken on Christmas Day. I keep this hanging over my computer because I'm sitting on my dad's lap. It's really cute. Look how he's holding me. I'm sitting on Daddy's lap with my Christmas presents all around me, and so this picture was taken in Pasadena, California, where we lived on Milton Street. It was taken on Christmas Day, and the Peace Pilgrim took off on New Year's Day from Pasadena, California. So in the same town, 7 days before she took off, my mother took this picture of me and my dad. Isn't that cool? Oh, I had a piece of it, yeah. I'm totally a part of it. There I am, 2 years old, rooting her on, and she thought about it for 7 days, showed up right after the Rose Parade, and started her trek across the country. So I tell you all that because I have this great quote of something she said that I wanted to share with you this morning. And this is what she said. Associations formed on this earth are not necessarily for the duration of a lifespan. So our friendships, our relationships that we form while we're having our experience, our soul's journey on the planet Earth, they're not forever. Sometimes separation takes place. In fact, separation happens constantly. But as long as separation happens lovingly, not only is there no spiritual injury, but the spiritual progress may actually be helped. Think about that. You know what? She's this really sagey, wise woman, a peace activist, and she's speaking about the existence of conflict in our relationships, and she's speaking of it as a natural thing, that relationships have an ebb and a flow. And she says, as long as there's love, there's progress. So please remember, conflict is not our enemy. It's the bumps in the road. The conflict is part of how we grow. You know how we say that? You know how I love to collect pebbles at the beach, and I love the way they rub up, the waves come and they go, and the little pebbles get shiny because they get polished from the friction. And they use that as a metaphor. That's how relationships are. The only reason so many of the great psychologists like Scott Peck and M. Scott Peck and Gary Zukav, so many of the great thinkers and people that have published books in our lifetime have made reference to, we come together in relationship to grow, right? We come, and doesn't matter who you're with, we have lessons for each other. And if we're willing to ride that motion, the ebb and the flow of relationship, then it really feeds us. So conflict isn't your enemy, but I do think there's a piece that I want to address this morning about doing it well, about finding our grounding, about saying enough already, even if it's to your own behavior as to how you show up in relationship, and that we can find a better way to do it. So what I notice is, and the reason I brought this quote in, I love it so much, is because I think we have confused the idea of setting healthy boundaries with the concept of alienating ourselves from each other. And I think that some of us, leave relationships, or worse than leaving a relationship, sometimes we stay in a relationship and we do that in sort of a punishing way where we cut off our love, where there's a coldness, like, okay, I'll stick it out here, but I'm not really in the game anymore. And I think there comes an apathy with that I think is horrible. So I love, me, I'm always like, I'm about conflict. It's like I have that passion for, I used to scare the bejavers out of my husband when we were newly married because he came from a real peaceful, quiet family. I did not. I just like, so how do I know you love me if you don't, show some excitement here? Fight for me, damn it, So we cut off our love, or we alienate, or we leave relationships, and we do it often in the name of protecting ourselves. And in fact, I was thinking that it's sort of interesting. We have things that come from the school of psychologists have taught us how to have tough love and set boundaries and hard decisions, or there are books now and podcasts about how to protect yourself from energy vampires. And so all of that is true. There are people in the world who seem to take more than they're able to give. And I think that all of us, everybody, including them, we all have to learn how to deal with that stuff. And I believe that it happens in a healthy way when we learn to set healthy boundaries and respect that. The bottom line is, I just think we haven't learned how to do that. We haven't been taught how to do that. And so the first step to setting healthy boundaries is getting centered in spirit. I often say, and I mean this with my whole heart, when you start feeling that, whatever that is that churns inside of you, when something has, you guys know, you've been together a long time, you know this, something happens and it's suddenly not feeling peaceful and loving anymore, pay attention to where you feel that. Is it a tightness in your chest? Is it hard to breathe? Is it something in your gut that's not well yet? Or doesn't feel good at all, and then breathe into that. Just stop right there. Enough. Stop right there and take a deep breath. Pause, and then open yourself to a higher view. So when I center myself like that, when I return to being anchoring myself in God's love, then I remember who my source is. I'm not looking to get my good from anywhere or anyone outside of me. I know that God is the source of my good. And when I know that, nothing can be taken from me. Then I can stand squarely and solidly in God's love. When I realize what I believe about the grace of God, when we teach about the grace of God, we talk about the way that God, we don't earn grace, that God is pouring that grace into our lives constantly. It is ongoing. And it is only we ourselves who shut down and miss the benefit of that. So as I re-anchor myself in God's sweet love, and I open myself to be a vessel to receive, so that love can express through me, so that God can express as me, then everything in my life changes. So as the Peace Pilgrim said, we're always connecting or separating. We're always ebbing and flowing. But as long as we're doing that lovingly and without injury, those are her words, it may actually grow us. It helps our spiritual progress. So I interpret that to mean drawing my line in the sand. It's a way I honor my own needs. It's a way that I can live comfortably in my own life, not in, I do not have to separate myself from evil, which is a really religious idea if you think about it, you know. So I can say no, I can ask for time to think things over if we're trying to make a decision. I can even disagree with you. If I am anchored in love, I can stand in that love-centered place and disagree without doing any harm. I can be loving without injury, as she said. Here's how Gandhi said it. Woo! What a great guy. Gandhi said this. This is such a good quote. Honest differences are often a healthy sign of progress. Whoa! That's a great quote. That is a great quote. Gandhi said, honest differences are often a healthy sign of progress. See, let's breathe that in. We're safe. It's okay. So we forget these things, and that's why we get to come to church on Sunday. You know, that's why we take classes, and that's why we have a daily spiritual practice, and why we do pause and meditate or sit still every day for a little while. I wrote a class in 2001. I got my practitioner license. I finally earned that, and first thing I did was I wrote a class called Soulful Connecting. I've offered that class here before. And I wrote that class because in my secular job, I was working for a nonprofit, and my job was, I was the program coordinator for a segment of what the agency did, and that was this, we offered family communication skills. And so I did that for a lot of years. I really loved doing that. And I did lots of other things too. I actually led we called it CAPE, Child Abuse Prevention Education Program, that was for people who were recently released from prison to be reunited with their children. Wow, that was something. That was an interesting class. But I did these family communication classes, and one of the first things we always told people was like, it's so amazing. And by the way, this statistic, even though that was 20 some years ago, or actually way more because I worked there a long time, but this statistic has not changed. I still see it quoted up to now, that only 3% of how we communicate with each other is words. 3% of our communication is words. So you know what that means? Better be real careful the words you choose to use, especially when you're talking about something really important or sensitive. So most of how we communicate is body language. It's a tone of voice. It's the passion we show. It's the way we have biases and stories lines that, you know, are moving in and out. And so the first thing you do in a communication class is you try and get everybody on the same page. First of all, they don't want to be there. Those parents have been court-ordered because their kids got in some kind of mischief, right? Usually had something to do with pot. But, and so there was, half the parents would go, my kid did not do anything wrong. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or he made a bad decision to hold it for his friend. That was the best line. They all said the same thing. They all thought that. Parent would leave the room. We'd ask the kid. He'd go, no, it was my pot. But so you had this group of parents that were in total denial, which, by the way, when I became a minister, I began to think, isn't it wonderful to have somebody that believes in you that much, that everybody deserves that on one level. So as long as there's a good parent and a bad, you know, a good cop, bad cop kind of parent arrangement, that would be best. But But the other half of the parents didn't want to be there because they felt like, why should I be punished because my kid did something wrong? And so I would always say, because this isn't punishment. This is going to change the dynamic of your family if you do this well. So I only had them for a couple months, but we would teach them then. You would start by helping them learn to be accountable for their style of communication. And so the basic premise, the beginning premise was that some of us are a little passive or introverted in the way we communicate. We're not as verbal. And others are really verbal and could be, instead of passive, we might be aggressive. If you're overly verbal, it could be perceived as aggressive. And that the midway path that we tried to get everybody to desire to emulate was what they taught as assertion. And so there was a lot about setting boundaries and having healthy boundaries and learning how to say no. And basically the way we defined assertion was saying what you mean without being mean. And but that didn't, when I wrote my class, that didn't translate very well. What I came to believe with my newfound practitioner license, nothing like getting those letters behind your name, right, and filling up with that. What I came to see was that spiritually speaking, it's tricky to talk about setting boundaries and imagining that there's a line and that I'm on this side of it and you're on that side of it. There was some incongruency there for me. So I changed all of that, and instead of teaching about, it was still setting boundaries, setting healthy boundaries, but I created an acronym out of the word ACT, A-C-T. And the A stood for align. So the first thing I do when I'm feeling, often it'll be anger is what happens, that's the first call. So whenever I'm feeling uneasy and it's difficult to speak in a situation, I'm going to first do what I said earlier. I'm going to pause, I'm going to take a breath, I'm going to align myself. A is for align myself to the principles that I know best support me. I'm going to align myself to the love of God. I'm going to ground myself in that infinite presence, and then I can move on to C, which is to claim that truth of my being. I am going to own the fact that I know I am a child of God, and if I am a child of God, so too is this person right in front of me. So I claim that, and if I am a child of God and I know it and I can claim it, that means that there has to be within my being a divine response, a perfect reply or response to any situation I may be moving through. And then the T stands for, then with that knowledge and that grounding, I can treat myself and other people in accordance to that truth. ACT, align, claim, and then treat yourself and others in accordance to that. So it's a way we practice doing no harm. It's a great quote from a Lebanese American writer, Amin Rihani. So fitting. When we go deep enough or high enough, we meet. That's where we connect. When we go deep enough or high enough. See, it doesn't matter which way you think of it. It is only on the surface that we differ and sometimes clash. True, we do not always find our way to the depth or the height, but maybe we do not because we haven't taken the time to do so. So logical, so simple sounding, and so relevant. So I want to close this morning with the words that Ernest Holmes used in that sermon in August of 1950 during the Korean conflict, the way he closed his message that day. I'm going to read you what he said. And by the way, he received an award from the Freedom Foundation. I think it was called the Freedom Foundation, which was a very prestigious award in 1950. And by the way, they still give that award out. Holmes said this, remember, regarding the Korean conflict in the world. As never before, our thoughts, our meditations, our hopes, and our prayers must rise in one common accord. We should take time each day to pray and to know and to meditate. We should pray for the peace in our own mind so that we shall not be confused. Feel how important that is? We should pray for the peace in our own minds so we aren't confused about what we think we see going on in the world. And then he ended the message this way. We know that in the middle of a crisis, something alive with meaning is taking place. Something vibrant with hope is happening. Something latent with the possibility of the future is being conceived. We have suffered enough. Let us join together. Let us share our passion for this space that we are opening to conceive a better future, a better world, a world that works for everyone. Take a nice deep breath, because we're going to pray. How I love hearing those piano keys and feeling the lift. Knowing that this is a signal for us to turn within, to simply lay aside all the things that have been spoken about this morning. And for a little while, we just rest in this love of God. I feel that love of God active in this room. And I know it is a love that propels, that supports, that embraces us, that provides the light and the guidance of truth, calling us to our own well-being. I recognize that that love is deep at the core of every person listening to these words of prayer. And that the very spoken word activates something within us individually so that we are quickened into action, into truth, into recognizing the possibilities. So I acknowledge and appreciate that we have planted seeds this day. I feel that love of God, and I know that it is a reminder that right where we are, God is. And that God, as that force for good, that propellant of love, that there is that law that simply says, yes, my child, yes. Return to love, return to truth. For this life is freely given. This grace is streaming into our lives even now. So we allow ourselves to recognize that sense of renewed aliveness within us, that it stimulates us to desire to do good, to do no harm, to stand firmly, anchored in spirit itself, and to know that just like me, every other being on this planet desires the same expression of good, the same experience of life. And so we join together this morning and we put our foot down and we say, enough already. We turn away from all the things that aren't working. We set aside our own negative thinking and we find that thought of God. We align to that one mind, the divine mind, that which brought all things into creation. And so that which we are conceiving even now in these luminous days where the consciousness of humanity is being reconfigured, we can trust that it is God that is doing the reorganization, that the time has come and that enough of us are ready and that the world has suffered enough, and so we open ourselves to the holiness, to see the wholeness, the perfect connection of each thing to the next. And so I speak a word of blessing on every relationship, personally knowing the goodness and the beauty of partnership and extending that blessing outward so that each of us finds that satisfaction in connecting and in verbalizing and in communicating with each other as we build a stronger foundation for our futures individually, but for a future collectively, for our future in this spiritual community of which we have been richly blessed. So I say thank you, God. Thank you, life. We just stand as vessels to receive that good, to allow that good to express through us as perfect health, as perfection and prosperity in our finances, as that beautiful flow of life. And we allow ourselves to receive. We let, as Holmes would say, L-E-T is a small word, but we let go and we let God. And it is good. And therefore it is with a complete and full sense of gratitude. I release the words of this prayer. I release them and let them be. And together we say, and so it is. Amen. Amen.
Grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. Everywhere I look and every face I see is love reflected, shining back to me. I just give thanks for all these simple things, the joy and peace that gratitude brings. That's why I'm grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have.
Thank you, Bradfords. I am grateful. All right, now's the time to celebrate the abundance of our lives and the abundance of our community. I want to remind everybody that we have fellowship after service. I want to remind everybody that we have a practitioner that is available for prayer right after service. So if you've got some conflict you need to work through, we got some practitioners to help you. So let's say our joyous giving affirmation together. I live in a consciousness of good. Divine love blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God, and so it is.
Thrift store is open. The thrift store.
Please rise for our final song. Put your hands together. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Sing that with me. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. I ain't thinking about my problems. I'm living now. I'm living now. And I ain't gonna worry about the future. I'm living now. I'm living now. So put your hands up if you feel like having a good time. Put your hands up if you're sharing love with all. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. One more time. Oh, 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 it feels so good to be alive. Woo!
Thank you, Bradfords. All right, let's say our closing affirmation together. I move through conflict in a healthy way,
I move through conflict in a healthy way,
expecting only good
expecting only good,
because it's only God.
because it's only God.
And so it is.
And so it is. Amen. Thanks for being here, everybody. Have a blessed week. Pray often, love much.